One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest from 1975, directed by Milos Forman, starring Jack Nicholson and Louise Fletcher. IMDb plot summary: criminal pleads insanity and is admitted to a mental institution where he rebels against the oppressive nurse and rallies up the scared patients. And this was a film at the time when I saw it, rented it in VHS. This was where I was a little older than when I was mentioning Apollo 13. So I'd known now what the Oscars were. And I'm now going back and looking at, are the Oscars a symbol of quality, and believing that, okay, if a movie's got Oscars, then it must be good, and therefore I should see this film. And this is one of those movies that I gravitated to simply because it won a lot of Oscars. Now, I have read the book that this is based on, but that was in high school, and I saw the film before I read the book. I didn't probably even know that it was based on a book. I was literally like, okay, Jack Nicholson, like he was the Joker in Batman. Like, I like this actor, and this movie won a ton of Oscars. It must be good. Let me watch it. And really, like, I remember just being like, wow, this movie on all cylinders, like, is amazing. It really blew me away. And that helped reinforce in my mind that, okay, well, the Oscar does mean something. It is sort of a symbol of, if a film gets a bunch of Oscars, it is an important film. It's a good judge of quality in terms of looking back and discovering older films. You know, this film was nominated 9 times, won 5, was actually one of the very few films that have won the so-called Big Five. So these are the awards that are Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Screenplay. And only 3 films have ever won this. It's this film, Silence of the Lambs, and It Happened One Night. So it's in a very small category of sort of saying, like, across the board, this film is great. It's not just performances. It's not just a screenplay. The entire thing is fantastic. And I remember really feeling that way. And just in the acting between Nicholson and, Louise Fletcher, who played the nurse, just some of the best performances I've ever seen. Just again, what the movie's about, this power dynamic of the collective of these patients rebelling against the oppressive, administration at this mental institution, and just spoke to me a lot too, because, throughout the movie, Jack Nicholson is, pushing back against this nurse and rebelling. But it's not until he starts getting the rest of the patients to rebel as well that the administration realizes, like, the collective is upset now. We must get rid of this, their so-called leader, and they lobotomize him basically, and they silence his voice, not because he's a rebel, but because he's rebel rousing amongst the collective. So it really sat with me of like, wow, this really is about how, movements and power isn't really in an individual, and they can't really be a threat to power. It's only when they start getting followers and people around them they're inspiring to rebel and push back that really the powerful get threatened. So I remember that message just really resonated in me well. But yeah, this movie is important because it helped prove to me, that the Oscars can be correct in choosing, movies that are important, quote unquote, but that also do stand the test of time. I mean, I saw this movie 20 years after it came out, and it was, still resonated with me so much. And even now in the rewatch, and I've seen this movie, several times since I first saw it, and it just keeps getting better every time in terms of just one of the greatest American films. And I think the Academy was right to give it the Big Five awards. And that's why this movie is on the list for me.
No, I love it. I watched it before, obviously watched it recently as well, and holds up, like you said, sort of, firing on all cylinders in all departments and fully deserving. Who were the other Best Picture nominees this year?
Yeah, that's another fun thing to do too, when you go back and look at how amazing the nominees were. So from Best Picture, Cuckoo's Nest won. Barry Lyndon, Stanley Kubrick's film, masterpiece. Dog Day Afternoon, masterpiece. Jaws, masterpiece. Nashville, Robert Altman's masterpiece. So it's like 5 movies that have all stood the test of time. I mean, this is definitely one of the best.
This is one of those best years in movie history.
For sure. Like, any single one of these movies deserve the Oscar, but at the same time, all the movies that didn't win, people still talk about them and laud them, and they're all still worth watching. So yeah, I mean, this really represents not only what the studios were producing at the time in terms of this quality level, but then what the Academy was recognizing. I think I'll get into this a lot later in the episode a bit, but why I feel like the Oscars have strayed away from this based on what the studios are producing. You know, I wish we were still doing this. Studios are making movies that were this good, and the Academy was then recognizing it. I think we've gone away from that, but this is a snapshot back to that time, and it is just incredible looking at the other films that were nominated.
It's incredible, yeah. Watching the movie this time recently, the one thing that I kept thinking about, which is in the beginning of the movie or the first half of the movie, or maybe in the entire movie, you're supposed to sort of sympathize with Jack Nicholson. And that's how I felt when I first watched the movie.
Oh, okay.
You know, because I was also young and I was like, oh, and I don't think I fully grasped why he was even there, you know? But watching it recently, I was like, oh, this guy actually raped a 15-year-old.
Right. He's a criminal.
He's a criminal. And but that's, I think, kind of what the brilliant job the movie does is that I don't think the movie is lionizing him in a weird sort of way, which, you know, if this movie was made today would definitely not happen. But I think it's actually playing with you and showing you something very real about human psychology and the power dynamics, like you said, where it just is what it is. And your allegiances sort of constantly shift in the movie. There are times when I'm like, yeah, whatever Nurse Ratched is doing is needed. Like places like these have to run with discipline and order. You can't just show up and like mess things up. That's going to have a lot of impact on people. But then as the movie goes on, you start to see things a little bit differently. You start empathizing with these people, and the fact that somebody is seeing them and rousing them and bringing them out of their shells, you sort of join in that as well. So yeah, it's a movie, like you said, just keeps giving more and more as you watch it, which is amazing. And again, like you said, the fact that this is true for all these movies in that year is astounding.
Oh yeah, it's just it's amazing. I mean, that period of American film, at least studio pictures, I mean, the stuff they were producing was fantastic. But yeah, I think it is interesting what you said about the different shifts of allegiance. I do think the movie is really trying to ask you, you know, whether authority in the form of a dictator, basically, which is what the nurse was representing, you know, is it good sometimes to have a strong leader? Yeah, it can be good. But at the end of the day, that means you are sacrificing your individuality, your freedom, and at what cost essentially does the peace in that institution come with? And I think that's what the film is asking you. It's like, is it worth, excuse me, is it worth what those patients have to go through just to get peace and stability?
Yeah.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.